We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. This is Abe, your host. It is 6:23 a.m., January 11th, 2022. I just got off work. Did some overtime today. Today was supposed to be my day off, but figured I'd make some extra money. Considering we were super behind, trucks are getting cut smaller, so yeah, fun. Today was kind of weird, though. We actually had one of the big bosses come in and work during the day, and I guess did a lot of stocking for us and stuff. So I'm kind of glad I got my overtime in while I could before overtime is cut completely. Well, I did have a fun day planned, like a fun podcast plan, but I came across something more important. I was watching Alex Jones yesterday, and he's the one that brought this to my attention. Now, this is an actual Washington state legislator, a bill that's being put into play, and very concerning stuff talking kind of like camp type of stuff. But this is a bill. It's a PDF. It's WAC 246-100-040. It's procedures for isolation or quarantine. Number 1. At his or her sole discretion, a local health officer may issue an emergency detention order causing a person or group of persons to be immediately detained for purposes of isolation or quarantine in accordance with subsection 3 of this section, or may petition the Superior Court ex parte. There's some legalese for you, some Latin. I'm not sure what that means. For an order to take the person or group of persons into involuntary detention for purposes of isolation or quarantine in accordance with subsection 4 of this section, provided that he or she, A, has first made reasonable efforts, which shall be documented, to obtain voluntary compliance with request for medical examination, testing, treatment, counseling, vaccination, decontamination of persons or animals, isolation, quarantine, and inspection and closure of facilities, or has determined in his or her professional judgment that seeking voluntary compliance would create a risk of serious harm, and B, has reasons to believe that the person or group of persons is or is suspected to be infected with, exposed to, or contaminated with a communicable disease or chemical, biological, or radiological agent that could spread to or contaminate others if remedial action is not taken. So I hope you kind of catch what this is getting to. Basically, snatching people up and locking them away. I'm guessing the unV'd Yeah, and this is in Washington State, U.S. soil. So, kind of a big deal. I should hope you guys share this with other people, and you can look this up yourself. Um, Pretty freaking scary. It's getting weird. C. Has reason to believe that the person or group of persons would pose a serious and imminent risk to the health and safety of others if not detained for purposes of isolation or quarantine. Number 2. A local health officer may invoke the powers of police officers, sheriffs, constables, and all other officers and employees of any political subdivisions within the jurisdiction of the health department to enforce immediately orders given to effectuate the purposes of this section in accordance with the provisions of RCW 43.20.050. 4 and 70.05.120. So this gives the power that a local health officer would literally have the powers of police officers, sheriffs, and constables. That's pretty freaking terrifying right there. Number 3. If a local health officer orders the immediate involuntary detention of a person or group of persons for purposes of isolation or quarantine, A. The emergency detention order shall be for a period not to exceed 10 days, so they can lock you up for 10 days. B. The local health officer shall issue a written emergency detention order as soon as reasonably possible in all cases within 12 hours of detention that shall specify the following. Roman numeral 1. The identity of all persons or groups subject to isolation or quarantine. Roman numeral number 2. The premises subject to isolation or quarantine. Roman numeral 3. The date and time at which isolation or quarantine commences. Roman numeral 4. The suspect communicable disease or infectious agent, if known. Roman numeral 5. The measures taken by the local health officer to seek voluntary compliance or the basis on which the local health officer determined that seeking voluntary compliance could create a risk of serious harm, and Roman numeral 6. Medical basis on which isolation or quarantine is justified. C. The local health officer shall provide copies of the written emergency detention order to the person or groups of persons detained, or if the other applies to a group and it is impractical to provide individual copies, post copies in a conspicuous place in the premises where the isolation or quarantine has been imposed. D. Along with the written order, and by the same means of distribution, the local health officer shall provide the person or group of persons detained with the following written notice. Now here's the example of the notice. You have the right to petition the Superior Court for release from isolation or quarantine in accordance with WAC 246-100-055. You have a right to legal counsel. If you are unable to afford legal counsel, then counsel will be appointed for you at the government expense, and you should request the appointment of counsel at this time. If you currently have legal counsel, then you have an opportunity to contact that counsel for assistance. Ain't that creepy? Don't that almost sound just like you have the right to remain silent? Anything you say or do will be used against you in the court of law. They're like pretty much cops, man. It's creepy, man. It's like brown shirt type of shit. Number 4. If a local health officer petitions the Superior Court ex parte for an order authorizing involuntary detention of a person or group of persons for purposes of isolation or quarantine pursuant to this section, A. The petition shall specify I. Roman numeral 1. The identity of all persons or groups to be subject to isolation or quarantine. Roman numeral 2. The premises where isolation or quarantine will take place. Roman numeral 3. The date and time at which isolation or quarantine will commence. Roman numeral 4. The suspected communicable disease or infectious agent if known. Roman numeral 5. The anticipated duration of isolation or quarantine based on the suspected communicable disease or infectious agent if known. Roman numeral 6. The measures taken by the local health officer to seek voluntary compliance or the basis on which the local health officer determined that seeking voluntary compliance would create a risk of serious harm. Roman numeral 7. The medical basis on which the isolation or quarantine is justified. So B. The petition shall be accompanied by the declaration of the local health officer attesting to the facts asserted in the petition, together with any further information that may be relevant and material to the court's consideration. C. Notice to the persons or groups identified in the petition shall be accomplished in accordance with the rules of civil procedure. D. The court shall hold a hearing on a petition filed pursuant to this section within 72 hours of filing, exclusive of Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. E. The court shall issue the order if there is a reasonable basis to find that isolation or quarantine is necessary to prevent a serious and imminent risk to health and safety of others. F. A court-ordered order authorizing isolation or quarantine as a result of an ex parte hearing shall I. Roman numeral 1. Specify a maximum duration for isolation or quarantine not to exceed 10 days. Roman numeral 2. Identify the isolated or quarantined persons or groups by name or shared or similar characteristics or circumstances. Roman numeral 3. Specify factual findings warranting isolation or quarantine pursuant to this section. Roman numeral 4. Include any conditions necessary to ensure that isolation or quarantine is carried out within the stated purposes and restrictions of this section. Roman numeral 5. Specify the premises where isolation or quarantine will take place. And Roman numeral 6. Be served on all affected persons or groups in accordance with the rules of civil procedure. 5. A local health officer may petition the Superior Court for an order authorizing the continued isolation or quarantine of a person or group detained under subsections 3 or 4 of this section for a period up to 30 days. So they can bump it up from 10 days to 30 days. A. The petition shall specify, Roman numeral 1, the identity of all person or groups subject to isolation or quarantine. Roman numeral 2, the premises where isolation or quarantine is taking place. Roman numeral 3, the communicable disease or infectious agent if known. Roman numeral 3. Roman numeral 4, the anticipated duration of isolation or quarantine based on the suspected communicable disease or infectious agent if known. Roman numeral 5, the medical basis on which continued isolation or quarantine is justified. B. The petition shall be accompanied by the declaration of the local health officer attesting to the facts asserted in the petition, together with any further information that may be relevant and material to the court's consideration. C. The petition shall be accompanied by a statement of compliance with the conditions and principles for isolation and quarantine contained in WAC 246-100-045. D. Notice to the persons or groups identified in the petition shall be accomplished in accordance with the rules of civil procedure. E. The court shall hold a hearing on a petition filed pursuant to this subsection within 72 hours of filing, exclusive on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. In extraordinary circumstances and for good cause shown, the local health officer may apply to continue the hearing date for up to 10 days, which continuance the court may grant at its discretion, giving due regard to the rights of the affected individuals, the protection of the public's health, the severity of the public's health threat, and the availability of necessary witnesses and evidence. So I wonder how many people are going to be snatched up in Washington after this shit passes. Hopefully it doesn't pass. Hopefully, unless it already passed and this is what the bill is, you know. F, the court shall grant the petition if it finds that it is clear, cogent, and convincing evidence that isolation or quarantine is necessary to prevent a serious and imminent risk to health and safety of others. G, a court order authorizing continued isolation or quarantine as a result of a hearing shall, Roman numeral I, specify a maximum duration for isolation or quarantine not to exceed 30 days. Roman numeral 2, identify the isolated or quarantined persons or groups by name or shared or similar characteristics of circumstances. Roman numeral 3, specify factual findings warranting isolation or quarantine pursuant to this section. Roman numeral 4, include any conditions necessary to ensure that isolation or quarantine is carried out within the stated purposes and restrictions of this section. Roman numeral 5, specify the premises where isolation or quarantine will take place, and Roman numeral 6, be served on all affected persons or groups in accordance with the rules of civil procedure. 6. Prior to the expiration of a court order for continued detention issued pursuant to subsection 5 of this section, the local health officer may petition the Superior Court to continue isolation or quarantine provided the court finds there is a reasonable basis to require continued isolation or quarantine to prevent a serious and imminent threat to the health and safety of others. The order shall be for a period not to exceed 30 days. State statutes, rules, and state and federal emergency declarations governing procedures for detention, examination, counseling, testing, treatment, vaccination, isolation, or quarantine for specified health emergencies or specified communicable diseases, including but not limited to tuberculosis and HIV, shall supersede this section. So there you go, guys. Some creepy shit, and we all know why this is being put into place. Not cool. Not cool. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hopefully none of you all live in Washington, and if you do, I would be moving. Because now they can just snatch you up from your house and just plant you in a quarantine area or quarantine you in your house for 30 days, for up to 30 days. Not cool. Not cool. But we have some time. We'll move on to another story. I like to cover drama every now and then. It's a lighter note since we got some time. I'm going to be covering Ethan Klein and Joe Rogan. Apparently they both have a podcast, and where I'm a podcast, I listen to other podcasts, and I like to cover drama whenever there's drama within the community, and let me know what you guys think. All right. So before we get into this, I actually used to be a big fan of H3H3. Like back when they used to do skits and all that. And he would make videos on like social commentary, and he actually was like, I would say back in the day, kind of like what I am now, like an old school liberal, which would now be moderate. I think they were hilarious, like their old skits and stuff. I mean, I fell in love with them as people, Gila and Ethan. But they got their fame and their money off of their skits, and then they decided to start a podcast. And the early stuff of the podcast wasn't bad. And somebody else made a video on it. This was like years ago that I seen the video, but it started off with a bang and then just kept dropping off and dropping off and dropping off and dropping off. And what it was H3H3 went woke. And when you go woke, you go broke. That, and honestly, it was just kind of like their politics, their wokeness turned me off to them. It got to the point I just stopped watching because they were always bashing on quote unquote conspiracy theorist and all that. And it's like, me being a conspiracy theorist, it's like I don't want to listen to this trash. And honestly, it's just like, dude, you guys were hilarious during your skits. Like, why didn't you just stick to your skits? It just, I don't know, just started turning lame. And it got to the point, like, I don't even really like Ethan or Gila anymore. And it kind of sucks because I used to love them, Now, Joe Rogan, I'm pretty cool with Joe Rogan. I know a lot of people in the truth community or conspiracy theorists, say that he flip-flopped and stuff. And he did. He flip-flopped on the moon landing and all that jazz. But I've heard stories that somebody visited him and said, hey, basically shut up. You're saying too much. But that's a conspiracy. It's unproven, I don't know. I mean, I still like Joe. I mean, my thing is people, they cut people off whenever they change their mindset on things. Like if I had this podcast when I was like 18 years old, you would have been hearing me scream about how all the elites are reptiles. Now I don't believe that all the elites are reptiles, people change, and so do people's ideologies, But I love podcasting because I'm a fan of podcasts myself. I'm a consumer of podcasts. I'm a consumer of content. So I listen to a channel called High Impact Flicks. He's one of my favorites. You guys hear me mention him all the time on the podcast. Go sub to his stuff. Go check him out. And if you do sub to him, tell him who sent you. Maybe he'll hit me up or shout me out or something, But he had a pretty cool mindset because all this blew up over Ethan Klein has bought into this whole beer bug situation. I mean, there was a huge fight between him and Crowder. I almost reported on it, but I just didn't. Him and Crowder got into it over, I think it was over just everything that's going on with the beer bug stuff. Ethan Klein said something real stupid like, dude, it's not that hard. You just don't even think about it. You just listen to what they say. And it's like, okay, like typical blue pill response, But I digress. What was I talking about? High Impact Flicks. I like the way that he handled it. This all blew up apparently because Rogan had Dr. Malone on there. And I actually listened to the interview up until Dr. Malone started talking about how he's buddies with some CIA agent, and the CIA agent knew about the Wuhan lab and was like, hey, you need to start working on a vaccine. Oh, shit, I said the word. A V word. And as soon as I heard CIA, I just kind of turned it off. I'm like, well, I used to respect and like you, Dr. Malone, but if you got roots and you're tied in with the CIA, like, I don't trust you at all anymore whatsoever. And High Impact Flicks brought that up. Like, this dude apparently, has ties to CIA. Also, one thing that High Impact Flicks mentioned that I actually enjoyed was he's like Joe Rogan and Ethan Klein are both on the same team. They both believe in the beer bug, even though the beer bug has never been isolated. So at the end of the day, they both fell for the beer bug. So I don't know. I just kind of liked that input. I wanted to kind of share that with you guys. If you're not fans of his and you don't listen to his content, but let's get into the story. I found an article to kind of explain everything that's going on, all the details, the nitty gritty itty bitty titty committee. You know what I'm saying? So this is from The Independent, so I hope it's a decent source. I'm pretty sure Independent's like a decent source. YouTuber Ethan Klein calls Joe Rogan a piece of shit for V-word misinformation. Ethan Klein, the host of YouTube channel H3H3 Productions, has hit out a podcaster, Joe Rogan, for spreading V-word misinformation. By the way, Ethan Klein's a podcaster too, so I don't know why they didn't put that in the article. Maybe this person doesn't research correctly, but on Tuesday, Mr. Klein tweeted, Joe Rogan, who lives on elk meat, egg yolk, and human growth hormone with lungs full of tar, thinks he's healthier than everyone. Well, first of all, why does it matter that he eats elk meat? Oh, wait, that's right. Ethan is a soy boy and a vegan, which I have nothing wrong if you're a vegan, but I can't stand vegans or vegetarians who bash people who eat meat like myself. And it's like, you guys are like most likely believe in evolution, but you don't believe that canine teeth are part of evolution. On why we have canine teeth is to carve into flesh. But just saying. Now, lungs full of tar, that one doesn't make sense because pretty sure you don't get tar from marijuana. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that Ethan is talking about how much weed Joe Rogan smokes. You don't get tar from weed. That comes from tobacco. Now, Joe Rogan does smoke cigars, but Ethan Klein, like I said, being a soy boy, probably doesn't realize, and he's probably never smoked a cigar in his life because he's not an actual man. You don't inhale cigars, buddy. So, pretty sure his lungs are just fine. This MFer is such a bitch that when he got COVID, he threw the kitchen sink at it. If you're so healthy, just ride it out like you say a man should, he continued. Now, once again, I disagree with that because it's like, Joe Rogan's a millionaire. Why wouldn't you throw the kitchen sink at it? Dude, if I had the sniffles and I had millions of dollars, I'd throw the kitchen sink at everything. Any health issue. I already told my wife if I ever got like $1 million right now, I would literally have them put me to sleep, fix my teeth because my teeth are horrible. So I'd just have them put me under and just totally fix my whole jaw, my whole mouth. I'd be going to the doctor, getting every test done, I'd be getting everything fixed, health wise. So yeah, why not, dude? This dude has caused so much hesitancy and misinformation, and he doesn't even have the balls to stand by the shit he preaches. By the way, that's one thing that pisses me off. The whole hesitancy. If you haven't taken it by now, you're not going to. So there's no hesitancy. There's no anti-V word. We just don't want it. Why is that such a big deal to these people who are like pro-V and all this? I'm not an anti-V word. I've taken the hepatitis A vaccine like 2 or 3 years ago. Like, not a big deal. But this is not a V word. This is a mRNA experimental technology. I don't understand why I have to change and alter my DNA to survive something with a 99.96 survival rate. And it doesn't mean, the point that I don't like is why they say they're V word hesitant. That means that you guys think eventually I'm going to take it, and I won't. I'm not hesitant, I just say no. And if, you're getting kind of rapey at this point if you're like, oh, you're just hesitant about it. No, I just said no. I said no. No means no. You cannot forcibly inject fluids into my body. That's rape. Understood? Okay. Now he's on his show talking about how fat people should just die of the beer bug. Dude is such a fucking piece of shit. Now I assume Ethan is mad because Ethan is overweight himself. And I actually did listen to the section of the podcast. Like, Joe didn't say that he wants fat people to die. He just says, if you're a fat person and you're vaccinated, oops, I said the V word again, you really don't have the right to be judging other people on not being V-worded when you literally don't take care of yourself and you're overweight. Like, and you're supposed to be, you have no right to preach health on other people is pretty much what Joe said, which I agree with 100%. If you can't even take care of yourself, you have no right to say anything about anyone else. It almost reminds me, man, I had a neighbor one time. It was actually my wife's best friend. And she used to get on to me about drinking. And this girl was like super huge. And I'm like, I never said it to her face, but behind closed doors, I was like, this bitch has no right to get on to me about drinking alcohol and destroying my liver when she's literally like gigantic. She walks 5 steps and she's out of breath. Like, sorry, but you're going to die before me. We can place bets on it. We could do a Deadpool if you want. You have no right to be saying anything health-wise. Mr. Klein's criticism continued. Quote, instead of getting V'd, he takes Regeneron, an experimental drug. Oh, almost kind of like your experimental V word. That was developed alongside mRNA V words. His logic makes no sense, and then credits ivermectin, which does effing nothing for the beer bug. That's actually false. But, it's Ethan Klein. I don't see him actually, like, reading or studying articles, so, yeah, he's not the brightest bulb. Not mention whatever the fuck is in Alpha Brain. That, I ain't gonna lie, Joe Rogan does take Alpha Brain. I don't know. I take ginkgo biloba, so I'm assuming it's something along the lines of that, which ginkgo biloba is just a generic, all plant-based. It increases the circulation of your brain, so it actually makes your memory, it's like memory support, makes you sharper, I love it. It makes me fucking, like, it makes me feel super fucking smart because my brain's actually getting the proper circulation, and I don't know. It's hard to explain. You have to try it. Just if you do try, drink a bunch of water. Otherwise, you're going to be pissing green, and it's weird, and it freaks you out. But he adds, referring to the dietary supplement promoted by Mr. Rogan that he claims to have taken since 2010. Okay, so he takes something to keep him sharp. What's wrong with that? He smokes a lot of weed. You need to counteract it, bro. Mr. Klein finishes his tweet thread by castigating the podcaster for an alleged double standard concerning his criticism of pharmaceutical companies when it comes to the beer bug V word. Well, yeah, it's Big Pharma. Why the fuck would you trust Big Pharma at all? Oh, wait, you don't study. You just cover nonsense all day on your podcast, and then you think you know it all, and you think you're making a big change in the world, and you're not. You just cover nonsense. He wrote, "Meanwhile, while Joe is on a big pharma conspiracy against V-words, someone needs to ask him who makes ivermectin and Regeneron and all the other shit he took while he had beer bug." Rogan and Mr. Klein have clashed online in the past with their respective fans quick to join in the fray, and this time was no exception. Fans of Rogan tweeted at Mr. Klein to cry a bit more, called him whiny, and said he was in need of attention. The podcaster has been criticized in the past for his vaccine V-word hesitancy and promotion of unproven treatments for the beer bug. Mr. Klein's supporters also responded with one tweeting, "Sitting here with the beer bug right now, and I am even boosted. I didn't throw a kitchen sink at it because it literally feels like I have the most mild cold ever. V-words work, baby." Okay, hit me up in about 3 years and let me know how that turned out for you. And by the way, it's not a V-word, it's an experimental mRNA technology. So, yeah. Use the English language correctly. Rogan has said that he supports the V-word for those at higher risk from the beer bug, though does not believe the wider population should require it. I agree with that. It shouldn't be required at all for anything, ever. In October, he invited Dr. Sanjay Gupta onto his podcast. Sanjay Gupta, by the way, he's a CNN doctor. He's a piece of fucking human shit. He's actually less than human. He's just a walking piece of shit. Onto his podcast to discuss beer bug V-words, during which the two clashed over how Rogan treated himself and how that was portrayed on CNN. The CDC stresses that V-words against beer bug were developed using science that has been around for decades, are safer than getting the beer bug. I disagree, but, I can't get into it too much. You guys do your own research. I told you where to find this type of stuff. Go to BitChute. Just go to BitChute. And are effective at preventing severe illness while limiting the spread of the virus. There you have it. Little drama. Something to lighten the mood a little bit after that dark build that I shared with you all. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as usual, I hope you all have a good day.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, would interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.